ज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमो ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिन्निति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। मूकं करोति वाचालं पंगुं लंघयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुं दीनतारणम्। Last time we discussed about the descendants of Bharadwaja Muni and Kuru, and we saw how Shantanu Maharaj came to marry Satyavati. Apart from Ganga Devi, Shantanu Maharaj and Ganga Devi's son was Bhishma Dev. And Bhishma Dev, through his vow of celibacy, he paved the way for Shantanu Maharaj to marry Satyavati. From Satyavati, Shantanu Maharaj had two sons. The elder son was Chitrangada and the second one was Vichitravirya. Unfortunately, when they grew up, this Chitrangada was killed by a Gandharva, and that Gandharva was also called Chitrangada. Somehow something happened and there was a fight, and the Gandharva Chitrangada killed the son of Shantanu Maharaj called Chitrangada. Because of that, Vichitravirya became the natural heir to the throne. In due course of time, Shantanu Maharaj left his body and Vichitravirya became the king. Now, Vichitravirya had to get married. So, there was the king of Kashi Raja. And this Kashi Raja had three daughters, Amba, Ambika and Ambalika. And the Kashi Raja wanted to get them married off to somebody else. But Bhishma Dev took a proposal on behalf of Vichitravirya that these daughters should be given in marriage to Vichitravirya. But because the king was, the Kashi Raja, he was not agreeable to the proposal, Bhishma Dev forcibly abducted Amba, Ambika and Ambalika and brought them to Hastinapura with the intention that they will be married to Vichitravirya. Bhishma Deva had no other intention. Now, out of these three girls, Amba, Ambika and Ambalika, Ambika and Ambalika agreed to marry Vichitravirya. During those days, this used to be one of the systems of marriage where a king could forcibly abduct a girl and then marry her, another princess and then marry her. This used to be a system which used to be prevalent in those days. Of course, it was not very common, but in some special instances it used to happen. In this case, when Ambika and Ambalika and Amba were brought to Hastinapura, Ambika and Ambalika agreed to marry Vichitravirya. But surprisingly, Amba refused to marry Vichitravirya. Although her two other sisters agreed to marry Vichitravirya, she refused. Now, why did Amba refuse to marry Vichitravirya? We will deal with that a little later. Now, in the meantime, Vichitravirya, he married the Ambika and Ambalika, and but then he became too much overly attached to them. And when a man involves in too much of sex life with women, he will become weak. In a similar vein, what happened? Vichitravirya became weak and he got tuberculosis. And finally, he died out of a heart attack. But there were no issues. He did not have any children. Ambika and Ambalika were there. Vichitravirya is no more there. Shantanu Maharaj is no more there. And the kingdom is now shelterless. And Bhishma Dev has taken a vow not to occupy the throne. And he has also taken a vow not to be a celibate throughout his life. So there are no issues who can sit on the throne. There is nobody fit enough to rule the kingdom. And when there is no ruler in a kingdom, what happens is thieves and rogues become very prominent. There becomes anarchy in the country. Lawlessness becomes the order of the day. And the common mass of people, they will get harassed. So Satyavati was highly perturbed that what is going to be the future of this kingdom. She was now the eldest personality in the family, and she had a responsibility to ensure that the kingdom is taken care of. So, in the Vedic times, there was a system known as Devarayana Sutotpatti. If a man is, due to some reason, he is sterile and he is unable to beget a child in his wife, his brother can beget a child in the wife on behalf of the brother. This used to be a system in the olden times. Of course, that system is no more prevalent today. In fact, in the Vedic scriptures, it is said that there are 5 things which are forbidden in Kali Yuga. Ashwamedham Gavalambam, Sannyasam Palapaitrikam, Devarayana Sutotpantim, Kalau Pancha Vivarjayet. In Kali Yuga, it is said that these 5 things are forbidden. Ashwamedha, to conduct a horse sacrifice. Gavalambam, to conduct a sacrifice in which a cow is given in as a sacrifice. In the olden times, it used to be the system that in a fire sacrifice, either a horse or a cow, an old cow could be offered as oblation into the fire. But of course, it is not like the animal is killed. That was not the thing that used to happen. By the power of the mantras, the cow or the horse which is put into the fire, by the power of the mantras, that same horse and cow will come out in a new young body. Only then was the Gavalamba or the Ashwamedha Yajna considered successful. In Kali Yuga, because there are no priests who are qualified enough to conduct such a sacrifice, and you may offer a cow and a horse in the fire of sacrifice, but there are no people who are powerful enough to chant the mantras in such a way that the cow or the horse which is offered in the fire of sacrifice will come out again with a new young body. Such powerful people are not there in Kali Yuga. Therefore, these activities are forbidden in Kali Yuga. Animal sacrifice is forbidden in Kali Yuga. Ashwamedham, Gavalambam, Sannyasam. The taking sannyas in Kali Yuga is also forbidden. Why? Because to follow the strict rules and regulations of sannyasa is very tough in Kali Yuga. Unless one is very highly powerful and advanced, he cannot maintain the ashrama of sannyasa. It is very tough and difficult. Sannyasi means he should completely be free from all kinds of association from women. He should subsist solely on Vishnu. Even in sannyasa, there are different stages. Kutichaka, Bahudaka, Parivrajaka and Paramahamsa. These are the 4 stages of sannyasa. In the Kutichaka stage, when a person takes sannyas for the first time, he stays just outside the village. And he has a small hermitage there. And the family people and the people of the village supply him the food and other necessities for him. This is the first stage of sannyas. And then when he is sufficiently renounced, after that he goes to the next stage, Bahudaka. In the Bahudaka stage, what happens is he does not stay in the same village. He keeps traveling from village to village. And whichever village he goes, he will beg for some alms in that house, and whoever gives him some alms, that is his food for the day. He cannot accumulate grains and whatever dana he gets, whatever charity he gets, he has to use it the same day. And he depends totally on the Supreme Lord like this. And then when he advances further, he goes to the next stage known as Parivrajaka. On the stage of Parivrajaka, he does not stay in any place more than a certain time, maybe 2 or 3 days. He will not stay more than that. He will keep traveling all alone through the forests. He will travel from village to village through the forests. Why? Why through the forest? Why not take some aeroplane or train and go and all that? The reason is that he has to learn to depend on the Paramatma. He has to overcome the feelings of loneliness. He has to realize that the Paramatma is constantly with him. He is his constant companion. And when he goes through the forest, he has to encounter so many wild beasts. He has to encounter various kinds of situations, unfavorable situations. Where he will sleep in the night, he does not know. Where he will get his food from, he does not know. He is totally dependent on the Supreme Lord for his existence. So this is another training for a sannyasi to learn to develop totally on the Supreme Lord. And the final stage is called a Paramahamsa, where he becomes a pure devotee and he is completely on the liberated platform. So to be able to follow all these kind of hard, strict rules and regulations is very tough for a sannyasi in this age. Unless and until one is highly qualified, one should not take sannyas in Kali Yuga. But of course, some personalities like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, our own spiritual master, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, they took sannyas. They did take sannyas because they were such exalted personalities that there was no question of their not being able to follow the sannyasa dharma. And not only that, it was the desire and order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead that they take sannyas for the sake of preaching the message of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. Therefore, they were highly empowered personalities and they were authorized to take sannyas. Otherwise, in the earlier ages, in the Vedic ages, Panchashordham Vanam Vrajet. Once a person has reached the stage of 50 years, he had to take up Vanaprastha and go to the forest, and by 60 years, he has to take sannyas. Sannyas was compulsory for every common man. It was not for some few people here and there. It was the order of the day. 60 years means you have to take sannyas. You cannot stay at home. There is no question of anybody above 50 staying at home. That used to be the system. So in Kali Yuga, it is not recommended that everybody, as soon as they reach 50, they take Vanaprastha, and by 60, they have to take sannyas. No, in Kali Yuga, it is not recommended. Unless and until one is highly advanced and authorized by his spiritual master, one should not take up sannyas. Sannyasam palapaitrikam, the offering of meat in sacrifice. This is another thing that used to happen, that for forefathers, there used to be one sacrifice in which meat used to be offered. But of course, it is not like the modern day thing where you have a slaughterhouse and thousands of animals are slaughtered. It was very rarely, some few people here and there, they would conduct that sacrifice. There used to be a system available for that. Although it was understood that in Vedic civilization, eating meat is not an accepted activity. It was an activity which was not considered favorable for spiritual life. So why then there is opportunity for the recommendation of animal sacrifice and offering of meat in the Vedas? That is because we have to understand, when we look at the government. I was one time driving somewhere in Delhi, and I happened to see a big, huge billboard put up by the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. And it was probably some 30 feet by 15 feet or something like, huge billboard. And that billboard was basically talking about how the ill effects of intoxication. One should not drink alcohol. It destroys the family. It destroys the health. It leads to the damage of the liver. You get liver cirrhosis, etc. And those kind of things. And educative banner exhorting the people to give up alcohol. This was the whole billboard. Now, a few yards further, there was a shop which had a big board which said government licensed bar. So that was a shop selling alcohol which had been licensed by the government. The government on one hand is putting up huge billboards and raising awareness of the people, please avoid alcohol. On the other hand, the government itself is giving license to people to open shops to sell alcohol. So what is the reason? The reason is the government understands that it is not good for people to consume alcohol. But then there are some people who are so desperate that they will go to any lengths to drink alcohol. If there is a total prohibition of alcohol, then what will happen? Huge tragedies will occur. Therefore, the government says, let us restrict the sale of alcohol and keep it open in certain locations only. There are many restrictions on opening a bar. It cannot be within 1 kilometer radius of a school or a religious place. A person who is less than 18 years cannot buy any alcohol. Like this, so many restrictions are there. The person who is selling alcohol in his bar, he has to ascertain that the individual is 18 years or more, and only then he can sell the alcohol to him. and every year he has to take a license from the government to run that shop. All these restrictions are there. Now, at the same time, if I want to open a fruit shop or a vegetable shop, I don't need to take a license every year. I don't have to see whether I'm within 1 kilometer radius of a school or a religious place. I can open the fruit shop or vegetable shop bang in front of a school or a religious building. Nobody is going to object. The government is not going to come and ask, have you taken license? The government does not restrict me from selling vegetables to a 6-year or 10-year-old kid. No restrictions. Why? Because the vegetables and fruits are not harmful for people. Whereas the alcohol is harmful. At the same time, the government understands that if I don't give opportunity for some people who are very desperate to buy that, they will engage in some antisocial activities. So to avoid that, they allow the sale of alcohol in a restricted way. This is the basic principle. Of course, there are, the government gets excise revenue and all those things. Those are other reasons. But I am trying to reconcile this, the fact that the government on one hand is exhorting people to avoid alcoholism, and at the same time it is allowing shops to sell alcohol also. So this is a crude example to understand how with restrictions, certain things may be allowed for a certain section of the people who will be desperate to do that activity anyhow or the other. In a similar way, the Vedas also understand there will be people who will be desperate to eat meat, and they will eat meat any cost. If you totally ban meat eating, then what will happen? They will slaughter animals in a clandestine manner and create havoc in the society. Better than that is have restrictions. Animals can be sacrificed only on an Amavasya. It should be done in front of Durga Devi. This kind of sacrifice has to be done. A lot of money has to be spent. All these kind of restrictions when you put, only very desperate people will go, and desperate people will know, okay, if at all I have to do, this is the way I have to do. There will be some restriction in the society. There will be some rule of the law which will be there. This is the spirit behind Vedas allowing animal sacrifice. But again, because in Kali Yuga, qualified people are not there to conduct those animal sacrifices, therefore even that is forbidden. So, and then the fifth thing that is forbidden in the Vedas is Devarena Sutotpattim. Devar means for a woman, her husband's brother is called Devar. If the husband is not able to, is sterile and he is not able to beget children in the wife, then the husband's brother can beget children in the wife. The children so begotten will be considered the child of the husband and wife only, not of the Deva. This was the normal system that used to be prevalent in those days, which is also forbidden in Kali Yuga, because that kind of brother to brother relationship is not existing in Kali Yuga. That bond between the husband and the wife and between brothers is not strong enough to be able to allow for these kind of things to happen. Now, how did Satyavati want to use this Devarena Sutotpattim provision in the Vedas to get successors to the throne? What was her plan? And why did Amba refuse to marry Vichitravirya? We will look at these things in the next episode. So, thank you very much for joining us. Hare Krishna. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol.